Hello, welcome to WorkLife Namibia. This is a program about the realities of work, the rights and responsibilities of workers and employers, and how understanding them can build better workplaces. With Workers' Day around the corner, and as our president, national leaders, workers, and employers prepare to gather in Apuo, today's conversation is all about where Namibia stands and where we're headed on key issues like workers' rights, job creation, and labor relations. I'm very happy to be with the Honorable Minister of Justice and Labor Relations, Fillemon Wise Immanuel. Minister, welcome to WorkLife Namibia, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Advocate. I'm pleased that you can have me.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just to get started, what does Workers' Day mean for Namibia today, and why is it important?
Well, I think Workers' Day has a long history. As anybody that have minded informing him or herself would know, it stemmed from an incident that happened in Chicago way back in 1886, where the workers took to street to demand the 8-hour day. So later on, as history would reveal, in 1889, so the day was then declared as an International Workers' Day, in order to symbolize, the workers' resistance to exploitations and unfair labor practices that may happen in workplaces. And it's in that context that Namibia celebrate this day, in order to remind ourselves of what is the role of the workers within our labor market, in order to assess the progress that we may have made insofar as the workers' rights and working conditions are concerned, but also it also serves as a call to action for us to close the gap between the employment and decent employment. And that's really what it means for us.
So what do you think are the most pressing problems facing workers in Namibia right now? And of these pressing problems, which is the most urgent? There may be more than one urgent problem. And how is government responding to address the urgent problems, especially for workers who, as we know, many of them are struggling every day just to get by?
I think insofar as the question of workplace justice is concerned, the problem would be plenty. The first one, and I think that's what any other person will be able to single out as the number one problem or the number one challenge, is of course the high rate of unemployment, among the young people as well as within the informal settlement. We are equally sitting with the problem of low wages, that is being perpetuated within different sectors of our economy. We face problems of employees not having effective grievance mechanism in place. We face problems of non-compliance with the Labor Act, as well as the core International Labour Organization's convention or principle thereof. We face problems of job insecurity. We face also problems of too much temporarily work arrangement that are in place. And I think those are just some of the problems that we are facing as a country insofar as our labor landscape is concerned.
The eighth administration has identified key economic priorities, such as youth enterprise development, infrastructure projects of various kinds, and agricultural value addition. How is the ministry ensuring that workers' rights and protections are built into these initiatives so that ordinary workers actually benefit from these developments? I ask this question because sometimes the workers are forgotten as we rush towards development.
Well, I think it's important at this very point in time for us to accentuate the fact that, you know, any strategic initiative or enterprise development that seek to create employment, it must involve the workers. And it's for that a purpose that from our end as a ministry, we are very clear and unequivocal insofar as the tripartite arrangement is concerned. Even with the initiations of these programs and these enterprises and this development initiative, we are demanding that there must be a tripartite task force constituted, you know, that are mapping out, you know, the implementations or developing the implementation roadmap. And when we then have the workers as well as the employers represented and sitting at the same table with government, we can then be guarantees that the outcome will be mutual. Now, to be very specific, what we are expecting is that in awarding contracts and in awarding licenses, you know, to these investors, we want to make sure that those contracts are able to stand or to withstand the legal scrutiny insofar as the workers' rights are concerned, that they must make provision, one, for sustainable employment. They must afford quality wages or decent wages, and they must also be able to speak to issues of environmental and social impact, you know, and must be able to speak or to have clauses or provisions that speaks against discriminations of workers and all kinds of exploitations that may happen in a workplace. And that's, we believe, once we are able to have that conversation and to have that considerations and that kind of inclusivity, then definitely we can at least be able to be assured that workers' rights will be protected throughout the implementations of those initiatives.
Now, there has been growing concern about subcontracting, about the use of labor brokers, and about temporary employment, which you mentioned in mining and in other sectors. How does government see this? What is government doing to protect workers from job insecurity and the declining wages that are linked to these problems?
I think the problem of labor hire, we have been sitting with it for some times now, to the extent that, you know, it even got a judicial test at one point. And we all know that in terms of our Employment Service Act, the labor hire it's provided for, or recruitment agency, it's provided for. However, I think there is a wrong interpretation of what the recruitment agency ought to do. Because what is happening now, and that is really what we are speaking against, is that you have recruitment agencies so that employ these people and they give them over to the employers, and the employers are paying the agencies and are not paying the workers, and the agency is the one that is paying the workers. That is contradictory to our legal intention, because the recruitment agency must simply scout for talent and scout for for the resource persons and hand them over to the employer, and the employer takes them on as their employee. And it's not that these are the employees of a recruitment agency that are doing work for the employer. And I think that is a wrong misconception that somehow needs to be corrected, across all sectors of our labor market. Now, the government stand, it's really that the recruitment agency must fulfill the role that is assigned to them by the law, and it's not for them to become employers, as it's seemingly appear to be the case at the moment.
There's another situation that has been discussed quite a bit recently. In fact, a parliamentary committee has looked into it. In the mining industry, the people, the entities that hold mineral rights are not necessarily mining. They hire someone else to do it. Those who do it, they also hire someone else to do part of the operations. What has been shown is that the wages and conditions of mine workers have actually not progressed, in many cases gone down, because of this subcontracting and subcontracting. Is there anything in this whole tripartite arrangement that could be done to look further into this problem?
Well, I think there's a distinctive difference between subcontracting and labor hiring.
Yes.
Okay. So subcontracting, it's merely an entity that has been requested to provide certain services to the contract holder. Mm-hmm. And that in terms of our legal order, it's not prohibited at all. Or it's something that is consistent with our legal order. So, however, what we have picked up as a problem is that you would have a main contractor and a subcontractor, and they all have workers, and these workers are doing the same job, but they are remunerated differently. That has come to our attention as one of the major concerns. And in actual fact, what our labor inspectorate directorate has been advocating for and educating different workers is that, or workers and employers, is that workers that are doing the same job and they are under the same contract, and the only difference is that they are employed, or some of them are employed by the main contractor and others are employed by the subcontractor. They do not have to be remunerated differently, and they don't have to be subjected to different work conditions. Mm-hmm. And that advocacy, we are actively pursuing it, and we believe that it will be able to yield result at the end of the day. But it is indeed one of the central concerns that we are seized with at the moment.
The national minimum wage came into effect on the 1st of January 2025, and in fact, certain additional levels of wages have come in the January of this year. Are you in a position at this stage to assess what the level of compliance is with the national minimum wage?
Well, I think maybe before I come to the space, to the level in terms of percentage, I must indicate that when we implemented the minimum wage, effective 1st January 2025, we were to implement it. We implemented the $18, across all sectors, with an exception of agriculture, security, as well as domestic domestic sector. And those three, they were to implement the minimum wage on a phased-based approach. But for all other industries, we were expecting that they should then comply with the minimum wage. In terms of the report that I have received, from from my team of inspectors, so the indications are such that insofar as other sectors are concerned, other than the security and the domestic as well as the agricultural sector, we are roughly at about 80% compliance with the minimum wage. The challenge, however, still lies within these three sectors: the security industry, the domestic sector, as well as the agricultural sector, where we are struggling a little bit with the compliance, or rather, the employers are struggling a little bit with the compliance. But be that as it may, so we are continuing with our advocacy, with our awareness creations and the educational programs to educate the employers on the need of complying with the minimum wage order.
A significant portion of Namibia's workforce is in the informal economy. Now, how is the ministry working to extend labor protections such as the minimum wage and health and safety protections to informal workers? And I would also ask in this connection, do you think the existing laws are adequate to protect informal workers?
Well, I wouldn't say that the current legal framework does provide adequate protections of the informal workers, and it's for that reasons that part of the legal reforms that we are undertaking is really to see how we can meaningfully cater for the informal or the workers in the informal sectors, and bring them into the mainstream of the formal formal economy. Part of the support that we are also getting through the Global Accelerator is also the transition or the transitioning of the informal sector into the formal sector, and all that is happening simply because it has been found that what we have in place at the moment doesn't afford the maximum protection or adequacy protection or adequacy in terms of protection to the workers in the informal sector.
As you already mentioned, Minister, as we celebrate the contribution of workers to our nation, we cannot ignore Namibia's high levels of unemployment, especially among our youth. Can you explain what is the ministry's role in coordinating and promoting employment creation across the economy?
Okay, the very first responsibility of the ministry, insofar as the creations of employment is concerned, is first and foremost to ensure that there is an effective and sound legal framework that enables the creations of employment, and also enables that the employment that is being created is not just for the sake of creating employment, but it's employment that is decent, employment that afford decent wages, employment that that also protect workers from any kind of danger in the workplace, and also employment that is sustainable, and it's just not the short term kind of employment. So that is the primary responsibility of the ministry, coming up with legislations and policies that would ensure that employment creation is sustainable and is sound, both from the perspective of the employer as well as from the perspectives of the workers. Hence, we have been, we have been very firm on the call that we want a tripartite equation where we have a conscious government, that is aware what are the policy gaps and the policy imperatives that are required. And we are also having a responsible employer that ensure that workers are protected and workers are treated fairly, and they are also remunerated decently. And on the other hand, we then have a responsible worker who knows of what his or her obligations to the employer and in the workplace are.
As Namibia prepares for what is expected to be significant growth in the oil and gas industry, and with strong national ambitions for success, are there plans to introduce regulations or guidelines to ensure decent work, fair labor practices, and union representation in this emerging industry?
Well, oil and gas is an emerging industry, as you have indicated. It's quite new to all of us, and I think as it unfolds, on a daily basis, the picture is becoming more clearer in terms of what direction we are taking and what kind of safeguard we need to put in place insofar as the legislative instruments are concerned. But as I have indicated, that as a start, what we need to ensure at this point in time is that in every task force, in every committee, and in every commissions that is established, to spearhead, the development of this industry, there must be workers included and there must be employers included alongside the government representative. And that will then be able to assist us in realizing as to what kind of the legislations we need. But most definitely, there is there is a need of dedicated laws or legislations that need to be in place in order to regulate this specific industry from all perspectives.
Now, I have a very important question, which I'm sorry to say I skipped in the beginning, but it's not too late to ask.
Okay.
What role do trade unions play today in protecting workers and advancing fair wages and working conditions? And in particular, does the ministry actively encourage workers to join unions and to engage and encourage collective bargaining between employers and workers?
Well, I think I think the answer to that is obvious, and I think I have been speaking to the relationship that exists between government, workers, and employers, through the tripartite arrangement and through social dialogue framework. But what is important is to indicate that the origin of unionization and trade union formation is the ILO Convention number 87, which came into being way back, in 1948, if I'm not mistaken. Now, that specific Convention provide for the freedom of association and protections of rights to organize. You know, and that is a right of workers. Again, through that particular right, you know, the right to of the freedom of association and the right to organize, it's given an effective protection under convention, ILO convention number 98. So, which protects and give effect to the right to organize. That is insofar as the international law is concerned, from the ILO perspective, which Namibia is party to. Coming back home, you know, in terms of Article 21, Subarticle 1E of the Namibian Constitution, again, the right to form and join trade union is fundamentally enshrined thereunder. So there is no doubt at all as to where we stand insofar as trade union business is concerned, as well as the phenomenon of collective bargaining in general is concerned, because we are we are party to the ILO convention. We have a constitution in place again that our parliament has passed, and as such, as the government, we have the responsibility to make sure that this constitution is respected by all persons. And therefore, as a ministry that is then responsible for justice and labor relations, our responsibility is then to make sure that all those rights that are enshrined or provided for in terms of our constitution, and collaterally those that are flowing from from the international conventions are respected, including the right to organize and form trade unions.
When one picks up the newspaper, we see that we have our share of strikes and labor disputes. You've indicated the importance of tripartism, but at present, how do you assess the current state of labor relations in Namibia, and what's working well, what is not, and what are your top priorities for improvement?
Okay, I think maybe I would answer that question from the perspective of dispute of right and dispute of interest. We have the occurrence of those two types of dispute happening across the country. Now, as I have stated before, and I continue to state, where the dispute is that of interest, government cannot intervene except on the invitation of the parties involved, meaning either the workers, or on their own or through their trade unions, or the employers on their own or through the employers federation, and they agree to say that we want a mediations by government
Well, Minister, we've covered many topics. I'm sure there are many more that we could cover on another day, but the time that we have now is coming to a close. I would like to ask you, what message would you like to share with Namibian workers on this Workers' Day, on this upcoming Workers' Day?
I think what I would like to say is that workplace justice is non-negotiable. It remains our advocacy. We are not going to relent to advocate for the fair treatment of workers, for the dignity of workers or the protection thereof. We are not going to relent to demand the fair wages of workers. We are not going to relent, to demand to demand for safety in the workplaces. As we do so, we are equally cognizant of the need to strike the balance between job security and business sustainability. And that remains our mission critical.
Minister, thank you very much for sharing some very powerful views on important questions involving labor and employment. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. This conversation is part of our Workers' Day series So do stay tuned for more on WorkLife Namibia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Advocate. And maybe lastly, just to thank you, for teaching me labor law. So what I'm doing now, what I'm practicing, and what I'm preaching, it's nothing else that I have other than what you have taught me.
Well, as we say, learning is a lifelong process for all of us, including for the lecturers and the students.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank